welcome to Holistically Yes. My name is Nancy.
And my name is Mayra.
And today we have a very special guest that I'm excited about. I know Mayra is too, but I'll let you take it away, Mayra.
So today we have Sydney with us. Sydney is in her last year of school that we went to, our alma mater. Is that how you say that?
Yes. That's not a Spanish word, y'all.
Y'all don't quote me on this. Okay. She's super amazing. She's also a fellow podcaster. She has her own show that she co-hosts with her friend. Sydney is super amazing. She loves the outdoors. She's on to travel and anything ocean. She also does dancing. It's Tahitian and Hula dancing. So welcome, Sydney.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here. I'm so excited to be in this community audio space, and what an incredible introduction.
We're so glad you're here. We try our best.
But yes, I am excited for today just because we're going to get 3 different perspectives at 3 different stages in our careers. So like you're about to graduate, Mayra's about to study for her and take her board soon. And then thank God I'm done. But
you're on the other side, the side we all want to be on.
Yes,
it's hard too though, but you know.
You're in at the end of that light at the end of the tunnel, like, you know, like, yes, that's what we want to get to.
We're aspiring to be you.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, you'll get here for sure. Trust me. It was rough while I was there, but you'll do it too. But Sid, how did you get into acupuncture?
That's a great question, and I'll try to distill it down as concisely as possible. But my mom started going to acupuncture because she was struggling with fertility. And so she sought out an acupuncturist, and they helped her get pregnant. And, you know, that was great. But then as she was going, she was like continuing treatments and whatnot, even after she was successful getting pregnant. And as a child, I always had like weird skin issues. Like I had eczema, and then I would have like all these funky allergies. And my mom was like, oh, wait, like, can acupuncture work for kids too? And this acupuncturist was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, bring her in. And so I would go in for treatment, and I was taking like Chinese herbs, and it helped with a lot of my stuff. And I think my mom was like, you know, I don't want to put my child on like steroids and things like that. So acupuncture was a really great option. And as you all know, acupuncture really works at getting to the root of a certain condition. And so it doesn't just treat the symptoms of something, but really looks to get at the root to resolve the problem. So I think that was an awesome way to be exposed to it and help clear up all of my problems that I had as a child.
And what a beautiful thing to have it go from like your mom seeking out like fertility treatments to like you being born to you utilizing the medicine. Like it's a whole cycle. Whole cycle. Yeah.
So then you just grew up with it, and then you were like, yeah, this is what I want.
No, not at all, actually. So I did grow up with it, but then things kind of resolved for me. And so then there was like a long gap where I just wasn't receiving treatments because I was pretty healthy for the most part. And then in my adult life, I ended up getting really sick with this autoimmune disorder. And my mom, some background, she is an ER nurse. So I had like this nice East-West exposure, but was still very much in like a Western medicine household with that kind of perspective. And so with this autoimmune disorder, a lot of times, you know, you get misdiagnosed, and that happened. So I got prescribed like all these medications thinking it was one thing. These medications weren't helping because it was an improper diagnosis. And I did all these various treatments, and nothing got better. Things continued to progress and get worse and worse. And it got to a point where my life was being like kind of debilitated. And I was growing increasingly frustrated and feeling like I wasn't being heard out by these like medical professionals, and people were just like, nope, it's this. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you it's not this. Like, I've already been treated for this, and like none of these things worked. Like, I really don't think this is it. And I know things are off in my body. And so finally, like, unfortunately, so many people do, kind of as a last ditch effort, I was like, well, I had so much success with acupuncture and Chinese medicine as a child, like, it can't hurt anything at this point, and I'm truly just like desperate and needing a solution. And so it took me a long time to get back to it, but finally I went to an acupuncturist and an herbalist, and within a few treatments, like, my symptoms started to clear up, and I was like, wow, this medicine is like super amazing. It was also just incredible to me to be like, you really heard me. Like, you took the time to listen. They did this like
Yes.
really detailed intake, which I hadn't gotten at all with all of everything that was going on. So that alone, I was like, you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
But then it like helped so much. And at the time, I was looking for a career shift, and I was working a job that wasn't sustainable long term for me and was really stressful. And so was already looking and wanted to do something where I was in service to other people, and was looking at a lot of things within healthcare. But then my own healthcare experience, I was like feeling more and more discouraged to go down that route. So it was kind of this perfect storm. And I really feel like the medicine found me, essentially, when it was like, this helped me so much, and is also kind of everything I've been seeking out to do as a career, where it looks at like your mind, your body, your spirit, and everything's connected and intertwined, and it doesn't like break you up into these pieces like Western medicine so frequently can do. So that's how I came back around into it.
That is so similar to mine too.
It's similar to so many people's stories, which like makes me sad, because I'm like, come to us sooner. Like, we can help you and you don't have to go through this frustrating process. But for a lot of people, like, we're the last call.
Yeah, I know. I do wish that people came sooner and they saw us as like a first resort.
Me too.
Because once they come to us, it's like, oh, it's so hard, and you're gonna need more treatments. And
well, also just coming to us as like a conjunctive effort, like you're going to your Western practitioners and they're not figuring it out. Well, you go to an Eastern practitioner, not to necessarily not continue to kind of figure it out with them, but just as a joint effort to get to a solution that's going to fit whatever is that's going on with you.
Totally.
Facts, girl. Facts.
I grew up in LA, and then I came to UCSC, and I got major culture shock because I grew up around mostly Black and Latino students and Filipino, and it's just like a medley of different cultures. So when I went to UCSC, I got a bit of a culture shock. But then when I went to our acupuncture school, it was like I went from like a culture shock to like a freeze. Like, I was like, what is this? Like, this is insane. So I just kind of wanted to see what your experience was as a biracial student in a more predominantly white institution.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like it's always been interesting navigating the world being biracial, because there's like so many settings where it's like, I'm not Black enough or I'm not white enough and I don't really belong in either space, kind of thing. And coming to acupuncture school, it was really interesting because I feel like there's so much of my life where I'm used to people like appropriating like Black culture or whatever. And me coming into this school, which is predominantly white and also predominantly Asian, I was like, wow, first of all, I'm so grateful to even be able to go to a school and learn this medicine, because that's a relatively new phenomenon. Right. Like, traditionally, in order to learn Chinese medicine and acupuncture, you had to be a part of a lineage and study under someone within that lineage and be a part of it. And if you weren't part of a lineage, too bad. You just didn't get to have access to this medicine or be able to learn or practice this medicine. So there's a piece of me that I'm like, wow, I'm just like really fortunate and grateful that I have the opportunity to go to school for this and learn this medicine. And then there's another piece of me, being biracial, of being like, how do I not appropriate this medicine, because I am not of Asian descent and this is not part of my heritage and my culture. And like, I want to do this medicine justice and be able to serve my community with it. But I also don't want to be playing a role in, like, misconstruing anything. And I think with like learning medicine in a lineage, things get passed down through story and through text and all this stuff. And so sometimes I have to question things too of like, how much has our culture like watered this down, like learning it in a Western society as opposed to an Eastern society. And then also just being like, okay, are we staying true and authentic to the medicine and what's like being taught? And then to take it a step further of like, now in order to learn it and practice, and I know in previous episodes you both were talking about the importance of going to somebody who's a licensed acupuncturist,
Right.
and with that, like there's certain criteria our school has to meet for like accreditation, and then to like go through the licensing exam and all of that. So it's this really interesting dichotomy of like, yeah, this is like the system in order to learn it, and then that's also how you become reputable, but also realizing this is not my cultural background and I want to be able to do it justice and not appropriate the medicine, but also feeling so privileged and so fortunate to have the ability to learn it and be able to practice it.
Yeah, you said that like the whole dichotomy like so beautifully. It's true. I feel like I struggle with that as well. Like when I started at the school, like how do we do it justice but also not appropriate it, but also
Right.
like,
But access is
help.
also so
Yeah.
important, and like, yeah, I want it to be accessible to the whole world and to like everyone of every race. And
Yeah, and I
so,
think for me, the other thing, and I asked one of our instructors this because I said, like, I am Mexicana, and how do I make it my own? And is that even appropriate?
right.
Because, like you said, I want to honor the medicine and where it comes from and where it stems from. And how do I honor myself and my culture and my like healing practices in
Totally.
combination? So it is this juggling act. Um, and yeah, I love how you said that.
And I think
Uh,
that's such an important point, though, too, because if you're not being authentic to yourself, you can't show up fully for your clients, like you still have to honor yourself. And I think it's really beautiful, too, to be like, I carry a whole different lens because I do come from a different cultural background. And, the ancient traditions of like Latina culture that have been passed down through you, and also like the beautiful, like herbal medicine and everything, too, to be able to blend the two of those, like how special.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's such a juggling act. But I think, like, for me, Sid, what I would like to know is I think both of you know that it was a struggle for me some days to go to school. Um, because as one of the very few like students of color at the school, I constantly had to I almost felt like I had to prepare myself mentally to go into classes. And it was like I almost was in fight or flight because I didn't know what like racist comments I was going to get, or if we were going to I was going to hear something that just didn't it wasn't okay. So I wanted to implement certain things so that I could help future students who are like students of color feel more comfortable. So I'm just wondering, how did you navigate that as a biracial student? Like, what tools did you use? Did you even experience anything like that? What would you tell to any of our listeners who are thinking of going to a school that is primarily, white? Um, so yeah, I'm like, what do you have? Do you have any sort of tips, or what do you
There
think?
were definitely like certain professors I would try to avoid because some of them you're just like, the things you're saying, like, this is so not okay. And I'm so completely uncomfortable sitting here in this classroom. And I think having to just like check myself, but also like the advocacy part of like, I have to fight for myself. And there's times when you go up against administration and you'd be like, I want to do this, this, and this. And they'd be like, no, you can't. And you're like, well, why? Like, what? So I think for me, it's just like, it was constantly questioning things and being like, why can't I do this? Why are these parameters in place? And like, what's the point in that? Because some of them it was like, okay, sure, that's a logical answer. And other times I was like, no, 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 like, that's not how we're doing that. And I'm going to do this my way. And you're going to be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, like, having support, like Nancy connecting with you in the beginning when you were a senior student and I was a new student, was so crucial, because I feel like you had kind of trailblazed this path already going through it. And I was like, okay, Nancy's got this. I can turn to her. She's like an ally that I have here that I can go to for support. And when I'm like up against these like difficult situations, also have someone to turn to who's been through it, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And then you graduated. And then I was like, okay, well, now what do I do? Because now Nancy's gone and she's on her own journey. And I was like, I have to just like really find my people that I can trust and be fully myself around, and that I feel safe around, that I know will support me. And when I have these challenges and these like frustrations, like I can vent to them, or I can get a new perspective about like, how do I handle this? Because there were times when I was like, I need to send this email, and I would type like a super fiery email and then be like, okay, can you guys check this? Because I know it's like not okay to send right now. And like, I need help watering it down a little. So it's like professional and polite, but still has like and gets my point across. And I feel like we organized a bunch of town hall meetings just because, you know, being in a small school, there's like institutional problems and like problems with administration and whatnot, and there's not a lot of representation. So if you're a person of color considering going to school for this medicine, like I would fully encourage it. It's not necessarily going to be an easy journey, but I think representation is so important. And I know both of you shared the statistics in an earlier episode about like the percentage of like Latinx practitioners, Black practitioners, and it's like honestly all really small numbers. So I think there's power in numbers. And I also think as a patient, generally, I feel safer being with someone who looks like me. And I think a lot of people feel that way. So the more diversity there is within ethnicities practicing that medicine, I think there's like that much more ability to serve a variety of communities.
Yeah. And I'm happy to hear, Sid, though, that you did feel supported, because honestly, that was one of my biggest goals, is to help the younger generations feel more uplifted and hopefully not struggle as much as I did. And I just want to also tell our listeners that, at least for me, if any of our listeners decide to go to acupuncture school and you're experiencing any of this, feel free to send me an email, because I will do my best to support.
Definitely.
But I'm glad that you found your community and that you felt more supported. And thank you for sharing that too. And
I just want to like circle back to what Sydney said about her fiery emails. They were amazing. I got to read a couple of them. I mean, I hear what you're saying about like editing them down, but I was like, yeah, Sydney, you say it.
Definitely. I was going to throw some punches. I was ready to throw down. And people were like, really this is not going to be productive. But I was ready. And I was like, I'm telling them. Yeah.
She was willing and ready. I remember reading some of it. I was like, oh my God, yes, girl.
Dang, Mayra, a ti te tocó to hear like mine and hers. Like, I mean, I had my own too.
I had my own struggle, but yeah, I got to hear both of them. It was just, I was like in the middle of both of y'all's little like
you're fired
whole situation. Yeah. But they were amazing. I feel like you should have framed a couple of them.
Oh my God. I want to read these emails now.
I probably have drafts. I can go through and find them.
You should.
And the amount that didn't actually get sent either. And I was just like, ah.
We can share drafts, girl.
Oh, right. I got to also read your drafts, Nancy.
Yeah. And you were the one that was like, maybe we should say this softer. And I was like, that's the best part.
Thank goodness for Mayra's level-headedness, right?
I tend to be more of like a peacekeeper. I mean, just in my day-to-day, more like, okay, I'm like, I need to see both sides and kind of like figure it out. But there's a lot to be said for just like throwing punches, you know?
That's a skill, because I was ready to like burn the whole place down, honestly.
Oh my God.
I mean,
you know I'm a fire tiger, so I'm just like, I'm ready for action, let's go. So it was nice having you to be like, have you thought about this? And I was like, I bet, tell me what I missed.
Like, it was like, tell me. So you kind of touched a little bit about like advocacy and you know how like you kind of want to empower the community by being an awesome practitioner. But are there any other ways in which you feel like you want to empower your community once you graduate and you get your practice going?
So I don't know if this will happen in my lifetime, but it's a dream of mine and I want it to happen in my lifetime.
It will
But
happen, girl.
I'm already like, it's gonna happen. Put it out there, tell us.
Yes, I had this really awesome opportunity to go do an externship in Vietnam through our school. And we got to practice at a Chinese medicine hospital where they practice acupuncture. They have herbs. They do tuina, which is a form of Chinese massage. And they also have all this Western medicine. So we would have like different daily rotations, like in the ICU, in oncology, in like geriatrics, like in all these different departments that you would find in like a modern day hospital here. And everyone was receiving like Western treatment. But in addition to that, they were also receiving herbs and acupuncture and all these forms of support. So like one example is in the oncology unit, everyone was going through chemo or radiation, but then they are also getting daily acupuncture. They had this like herbal steam that they would receive and they would get massage. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool to see this like integration of Eastern and Western medicine. And it's not like one's better than the other. They're totally coming together to to give the best possible care and support to this patient. And like, how incredible when every cell in your body is being killed because chemo doesn't just go, let's fight the cancer cells. It's fighting every cell. And so your whole body is like completely wiped out and depleted. So to get like massage and scalp acupuncture and herbs just to kind of like boost and supplement things, I was like, why is this not happening in every oncology department in the United States? And how are we so far behind? Like, medically, and why aren't things integrated? Like, I think everybody should have a team of healthcare practitioners to have their like primary care, like Western physician and their Eastern physician, and everyone like be in communication to come up with like the best treatment plan. And I just think like as a society, we would be so much more successful and people's health would be like so much better if we all work together and could combine it and integrate it. And I like, that's really my dream and my hope that this integration will happen. I think we're getting there, but we definitely have a really long way to go. But my goal in like my community, is access, because you can't integrate if you don't have access. And there's so many people in my like there's just so many folks that I've encountered that have never even heard of acupuncture. They don't know what it is. How can you access something if you don't know it exists? So first of all, access is important. And I think education is like a huge part of that too, of just like teaching and informing people about this medicine. And then I've encountered a lot of folks that have heard of acupuncture but don't really know what it is, or they'll be like, oh, well, I've heard of it, but I've never really gone because like I don't have any huge ailments. And I'm like, you don't need to have huge ailments. Like, you don't only get your car in the shop when it doesn't start. Like, you are also this well fine-tuned oiled machine that like needs maintenance from time to time. And you don't have to have like extreme pain or something like super, super wrong to access this. Like, you can just go for a tune-up. Like, that's also so important. And just like we live in such a stressful society that I don't think people realize like the mental, emotional impacts that herbs and acupuncture can benefit too. So I think access is important. And then that's helpful because like insurance is starting to cover it, but like even still, it can be expensive and it can be just not a priority for people. So I would love to see it become more affordable, more accessible, and just integrated. That's in my dream world. That's what would happen.
It'll happen because even with one patient, they start seeing their Western doctor and then they start seeing you, and that's like one way.
Definitely.
Well, just even also talking about it, like how you were explaining how, in Vietnam they had like oncology, Western doctors, and then how herbal medicine and everything is good for that as well. Like, yeah, just people hearing the podcast too, being like, oh, it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both. It can be a collective effort.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that the hospitals don't work the same everywhere, like how they work in the US. So even knowing or hearing that you can go to China and they have like a full-on herbal room where by the time you're done with your appointment, your herbs are ready and ready to go. You know, you just pick them up like a prescription and you're done.
Yeah.
That
How
is so
incredible.
cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah, and also to what you said, like, yeah, we're a well-oiled machine that needs regular tune-ups, like to make sure that everything is functioning.
Totally.
So not just when we're getting sick, but also just preventively make sure things are running smoothly.
Preventatively and just, maintenance. It's important.
Super important.
Well, Sydney, also something I didn't know about you is that you were a dancer. So I was pleasantly surprised. But I want to know, how did you get into it? And then how does that play a role in your overall health?
That's amazing questions. So I grew up doing ballet and was like very, very immersed in that world. And I guess I partly have ballet to thank for all of this because I still have like chronic injuries to this day that I get acupuncture for. And it's helped a lot. Like I've had chronic back problems and everything from ballet, and acupuncture has helped a ton. But then like when I finished high school, I stopped ballet. And then all throughout my undergrad, really missed dance because it was such a big part of my life, but it was also so intense that I was like, I miss it, but I don't know that I want something that intense in my life again. And then I graduated from undergrad and was kind of working in this like lifeless, soul sucking career. And I was like, I need more than this because I'm really not happy. And I actually really miss dance. And that's something that fed my soul. And I've always had this huge draw to hula and Tahitian. And like, I love Hawaii. I feel very connected to that space. And I was like, why not try it? Like, there's no time like the present. Why not? And so I found a Hula, which is a hula school, and just totally fell in love because it became this piece of my identity that I missed so much, but it didn't have this like super strict, like regimented pace that ballet did. Like it was fun, and I was surrounded by this like beautiful community of women, and a lot of it's actually really interesting because I find so many parallels between Chinese medicine and hula and Tahitian, because so much of hula, you're telling story, and you're telling story of the land and how the land nourishes you and how you can live off of the land and how you connect with ancestors, and you're like passing on stories of your ancestors. And it's really, for me, it's this physical practice, which I like because it's a good break from school. It gets me out of my brain. Like I'm still using my brain, but in a more creative way than I get to in school. And it allows me to connect to my body. But then I also feel like I'm connecting to something like so much greater than myself, being able to like connect to these ancestors and learn these like beautiful stories of the land and nature and like these cycles of nature. And like that's so much Chinese medicine, you know? So I feel like because of that, there was like a huge piece that I also gravitated to hula and Tahitian specifically, because all of it is revolving around nature and earth and ocean and the mountains and the rainfall, and it's just really beautiful. And yeah, it's been an awesome outlet.
I love how even as you're like talking about it, you're like doing the movement. Like I could feel the fluidity of the dance.
Yeah.
Just as you're even doing like the rain and the mountains. Like I can see you like dancing it. Like I can see the fluidity of the movements.
Yeah. It's very fluid and beautiful, and good to move the liver chi stagnation.
I need that.
And that whole thing about like how you were mentioning how it's like it goes with the seasons, and also like, you know, giving things to the land and the ancestors and all that. It just really reminds me of like a lot of the danzas, like a lot of the dancing that happens in a lot of different parts of Mexico, because there's a lot of different small like a lot of different native dances in Mexico, and a lot of them have that to them. It's like you're giving thanks to the ancestors, you're giving thanks to the land, so it just reminded me of that as you were talking about the dancing.
It's so beautiful. Another thing I love about it too is like it's so multi-generational. Like I'm dancing with little tiny girls and then like amazing aunties and grandmas, and that's something that's like such an appeal to me too, where it's not so harsh on your body, that it's like, okay, you have like a 10-year window of this where it's like I get to do this forever. Like how lucky is that? And just also really cool to be in this like group of women of like, oh, I have these like wise old owls who are like 80 that have so much to pass down, and then also being like, and we have really young people too. And so that part's also really cool, because I feel like there's not a lot of areas in my life where there's this huge like intergenerational mix.
Have you gone back to ballet at all?
No, I have not. I don't really have any desire to. Like I get my dancing fix through this. Like it feeds my soul so much more than ballet did. Like I'm grateful for ballet. I think it gave me like a really strong foundation to move into other forms of dance, but this fills my soul in a way that ballet really did not.
How many years were you a ballet dancer? Sorry.
I started when I was 3.5 or 4 and stopped when I was 17 or 18.
Dang, that's a long time, Sid. No wonder your poor little feet.
Yeah, those toes, they were brutal.
Are you planning to incorporate that into your practice at all?
I would love to. I'm not quite sure how yet, but I think it will come through. Like it's so much of me that, like you were saying, like you have like this beautiful cultural background that you grew up with, and like that comes through when you practice. And it's just kind of like once something's a part of you, you don't just get to section it off as you're practicing. So I hope it comes through.
I'm already envisioning, how people do like Qigong classes? You can be like Hula energetics.
Or Hula. Cool.
Like, how we just had the Meridian yoga? You could do like Hula and like Meridian dancing.
These are great ideas. I love it.
Dang.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, you could totally like, we're going to work on the, like the
oh my God, that's such a good idea.
Right, you both have to be there. Yeah.
Yes.
That would be super epic.
I will be there for sure.
Gotta get over here, Nancy, to Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I'm going.
Yes. Sydney, anything else you'd like our listeners to know? This has been really insightful, and we're very grateful you're here, but anything else you'd want to let our listeners know?
I'm super grateful to be here. I don't think I have much else. This has been like such an awesome conversation. Like I'm just like loving all of it.
Yeah, I know. I love talking to other acupuncturists.
I guess I'd want to know, do you have any, you'd mentioned earlier, but do you have any tips to like any advice for students recently like enrolled in like acupuncture school, like as newbies? Like what would be like your top 3 advice?
Find community, like find support. Looking back at my time in this program, like I really don't think I could have done it without my cohort. And I think so much of this medicine is like about community, that it's really important to have that in place. And just like other outlets too. Like you can't be doing school 24/7. There's a point where your brain is just like not going to keep retaining things. So find other outlets, whether it be surfing or dancing or playing a sport or just like anything that's not school related, I think is also just kind of important to keep you grounded and to maintain your sanity and to like really be able to thrive in this kind of program, because it's intense and it's hard and it's not easy. And yeah, I think support is so crucial.
I second that.
I third that. So Sid, we have a tradition here where we ask our guests to let us know their holistically us moment of the week. So it's a moment where you showed up authentically as yourself Would you like to share that with our listeners?
Yeah. So I just started my final term of school, and it's always an adjustment starting a new term. You have a new schedule. Yeah. And I think that starting this last term is like stirred up so much in me. Like there's excitement, but there's also like terror and fear because I've been in this routine of like, I've just been in school for the last 4 years and this is my life. And now I'm like, all of this is coming to an end. Oh no. And I've found that I've been like really just like anxious and like worried about the future and worried about passing boards and how am I going to practice and where am I going to practice? And oh my gosh, like all of a sudden I have all these decisions to make and need to figure it out like right now. And so that's kind of been in my orbit lately. And finally this week, I was just kind of like, you know what? I can't make any decisions right now. I have a lot of concern. I have a lot of worry. What can I do about it? There are like 0 actions that I can take in this moment. And me being worried and anxious and stressed about it is like really not serving me at all right now. Instead, I just need to like be grounded in my body and it will all be okay. Like I just need to trust the universe. And so finally I'm just letting it go. And so I feel like that has been like my holistically me moment and just being like, don't stress about it. You can't do anything about it anyway. Just like come back into your body. And so I've really been working on like grounding and letting go.
I wish I had that skill as easily as you just said it.
It's easier said than done.
But no, you're right. I mean, I went through the same thing. You know, I was like, oh shit, like where am I? I'm graduating the boards. I don't know where I'm going to live. Like, where do I want to land? Yes.
That's totally how I feel. It's like a pretty big existential crisis because it's something that's always like, I knew this moment was coming, but it was like, oh yeah, that's like down the road. I'll deal with it then. And now I'm like, oh, the end of the road is like here now.
Well, it just feels so far like away when you start because it's like 4 years. You're like, oh my God, this is going to take me a lifetime.
Exactly.
And then before you know it, you're like graduating. And I totally get what you're saying because as I'm studying for the boards, I'm having these little existential crises like up and down various times a day where I'm like, oh my God, am I going to pass the boards? And I'm like, okay, chill. Like you can't, all you can do is study. And then next day it's like, oh my God, like, am I going to do anything with my life? You know, it's like, so it's just like an ebb and flow of just constant. So yeah,
it's so much up and down. And it's just hard, like not knowing what's waiting on the other side of like, will I get a job? Where's that going to be? We don't know.
You will get a job. The other side is great, y'all. Like, there's a lot of stress still, and like, it's just this beautiful roller coaster. But knowing both of you and both of your work ethics, and even the way that you both speak about the medicine, it's going to be epic. I'm not worried about y'all.
And thank goodness we have you to be like, it can be done. It's being done. You were once in our shoes and now you're totally thriving.
Well, and I think it's good, like you said, to have support. So I'm so happy that we have each other and we have community because even like if you guys have questions about your own business or even studying or whatever, right? Yes, feel free to reach out and ask. And when I have my freak out moments, like, shit, I don't know what to do, you know, with this hard case, or I'm stressing about, I don't know, like marketing or something. It's nice to be able to know that I can also reach out to both of you. So community all the time.
Yeah, because I don't think like our medicine or our profession really emphasizes that a lot. Like in school. Well, one, I don't personally felt like I got any training in the business aspect of it. And that's basically most acupuncturists end up in a private practice. So we're having to learn on top of the medicine that's in another language that's like vast and we can never like in our lifetime completely know everything about it, learn how to run a business. So there's so many like things that are piled on. So when we're graduating or when we graduated, well, for me, when I graduated, I should speak for myself, it just was like a lot at once because it was like, oh my God. Well, I was going through my cancer stuff on top of it, but there was like, oh my God, I'm graduating and I have to pass my boards and now I have to learn how to run a business. And little by little, I'm like putting all the pieces together on how to make all that happen for myself. But yeah, it totally makes sense. And rooting yourself, breathing into it, and just knowing like one step at a time, you'll be fine. Like you'll land where you need, like where the ancestors and where your spirit is supposed to land. You'll be fine.
Yeah. And something that helped me too, Sid, is like that even wherever you land, that doesn't have to be permanent. So even if you start something somewhere and it just doesn't work out, it's okay. You can go somewhere else, you know?
This is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like really amazing that we have so many options of how we can practice. It's also really overwhelming to be like, there's so many possible ways you could do this.
Yes.
Yeah. And to not have a blueprint on how to go about anyway. Because if you are like, yeah, I want to go private route or I want to go do this, like there's not really a blueprint or we don't really get taught how to achieve whatever that way is. So it can be overwhelming. But yeah, to what Nancy said, it doesn't have to be permanent. And also I feel like we put these hard set deadlines on our lives where it's like, oh my God, like I graduate tomorrow. I need to have my boards done by like this date and I need to have, and those are all arbitrary. Like we're creating that for our, like there's nobody is behind us. I mean, there's things in life that need to get paid, need to get done, but nobody's really putting these hard set deadlines on us to accomplish things. And we just have to remember that it's really on us, and when the timing is right, things will happen.
Totally. But I feel you with those arbitrary deadlines. And I think that just, it's all of our work ethics where we all have like so much drive and ambition and want things to get done. But yeah, it's easy to be like, okay, actually, wait, I'm creating more stress for myself. This deadline actually is totally made up.
Yeah. And I think also for me, and I think you two can relate, is we also have this added, like, we want to do more for our communities. And we also want to like uplift our communities of color, that it's something that is a big driver, but it's also an added, like, I mean, it is a self, but for me, I feel like it's a self-imposed, but it's also not a self-imposed pressure. So there's just like an added world community responsibility.
Yeah, totally to your point, Nancy. Like I think there's a piece of like being a minority where you always feel like I have to do better, I have to do more, like I have to prove myself and really show up because like the odds are already so stacked against us that it's like, well, we have to do more. Like we can't settle for the bare minimum because it's just not enough. And that sucks, but it's like the reality.
Yeah, it is the reality. But yeah, learning that balance is also a never-ending goal. But Sid, I know I wish I could talk to you forever.
I know. I could talk to both of you all day long.
For our listeners, how can they best get a hold of you? I know you have a podcast, so please mention that. Tell us all the deets.
Okay, well, I do not have a professional account yet, but that's pending. But you could find me on Instagram. My personal account is Sid Davis with 2 V's in Davis. And then I also have a podcast that's called Wait, Should We Record This? And you could follow our podcast on Instagram at Wait, Should We Record This Podcast? And it's on Apple and Spotify as well.
And we'll be putting all the details on the description as well, so that they can just like link up and find you. And Sydney posts amazing pictures of her travels, guys. Like amazing videos, pictures. She loves to like dive and surfs and visits the most beautiful beaches in the world. I love them.
Me too. I love traveling and exploring new cultures.
So if you guys are into seeing beautiful, beautiful shots of different parts of the world, Sydney's account is amazing.
Thank you.
Well, Sydney, thank you for being with us today, being such an amazing guest. And giving us a lot of insightful details about being a student and getting ready to graduate and just emotionally where you're at. We love to hear everything that you brought to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor.
Thank you, Sid. It was so nice to reconnect.
Yes. And I love your guys' podcast. It's amazing. I've listened to every episode. You're killing it, and I love it. Keep them coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, girl.
We're giving the people what they want.
By popular demand.
By popular demand, we're here.
Giving you all the chisme on what we think about our guests and what we learn.
We've heard the noise and we're here. We're here to answer the call. Y'all wanted this.
Y'all wanted this, so we're back.
All right. I love Sydney.
I love her. I love her energy.
Oh my God. I've gotten to see Sydney dance, the Tahitian and Hula, and it's
where?
For her birthday, I don't think it was her last birthday. It was the year before. She had a party at this one place, and a lot of her friends from the Tahitian group came. Hula Tahitian group came to dance, and they did like an impromptu dance because they were gonna have a performance that weekend or next weekend. I'm not sure. Sydney, when you're hearing this, I don't remember the dates, but
don't catch her lying
don't catch me lying here. But anyway, I got to see her. It was so amazing, and it is so beautiful, and you really do see like the mountains and the water and just everything. So. Yeah.
I really awesome. Admire people who dance. I've wanted to dance all my life, and I just never have gotten the courage to do it, but I want to.
Girl, do it.
Oh, man. I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Do it. Do it. Just do it.
Just do it. I know. No, it's good this year. One of my friends was like, they do a whole word for their New Year's. For the new year, they pick a word, right?
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I was like, okay, what would be my word? And I decided that my word for this year is reverence. So I want to revere my body. And I already feel like I revere everything else. I revere my patients. I revere my practice. I revere the medicine. I approach, I would say, most everything with reverence, but I've never approached my body with reverence. So this year it's all about physical, doing physical things for my body. So I want to do massage and exercise and see how strong my body can feel. And I want to have bomb sex, and I want to have I want to enjoy pleasure, and so I've always wanted to do dance. And after hearing Sydney speak of it, I feel like it's my sign. I need to get into it.
You should. Yeah. I like that reverence for your body. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should all be able to revere our bodies.
Mira.
De arriba, desde la cabeza hasta los pies. And everything in between.
And everything. So Mira, whoever approaches me, if you're not going to be revering and honoring my body, pues don't.
Don't approach.
Don't approach me.
Don't. Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Do not approach.
Oh my God. I'm starting to blush and I'm brown. So.
You're all good. But it was also super interesting to hear her talk about how community is really important. When you are going through school. I feel like that's something that I didn't really think about when I first started going to acupuncture school. I was really like, oh, I'm on my own. And I mean, honestly, aside from being culture frozen, I was like, oh man. Aside from that, and just feeling, I felt mostly like I just couldn't trust anybody. Being a kid who you know, well, not only did I grow up in LA, but I was born in Mexico, and I didn't come here till I was 7. So I didn't really get to interact with a lot of white people. I didn't really get to have that growing up at all. So my few interactions that I did have were always very scary because they were always very um, racist, and or like, you know, I just didn't feel like I belonged. So when I started the school, I was like, oh man, do I not, like, I don't belong here. So I just completely walled myself and I shelled myself up because I was like, no, nadie me va a tocar, because I can't, like, you know, like, I can't let this happen. So it was really interesting hearing her being like, oh, community was so important. After after I met you, that's when things kind of, I was like, okay, I do have to build community. And then I found my way, and I built, like, aside from having you as part of my community, I built like more community with the other folks. So it was good to hear her say that to students or people who are thinking about going to school, because it will be super critical to have a community to survive and thrive in school.
Yeah, and for me, I also never really thought of the community aspect like that, porque I was the opposite of you, where I grew up in a very white town and high school, and then I went to med school, and I was like one of the only people of color in my classes. So I've grown up with a lot of white counterparts. And I think when I went to school, it was like, okay, I know how to navigate this, but it's more of a protective thing, like you said. It wasn't, I never felt like I could just like breathe and be my true, authentic self. So it wasn't until you showed up, because I think I was by myself for, like, I was the only Latina in the school for, well, how much was it? Like, it was a couple terms.
It was 2 terms, I think.
Yeah, I think it was 2 terms. So when you showed up, I was like, thank you, God. Yeah, that's when I was like, okay, I feel like I can relax a little more. And that's when I started to show más who I am. And then I started to build more authentic community that way.
So interesting how, like, you grew up around a lot of white people, and it's like you navigated that as a way of protection, and I walled up as a way of protection. It's like how we protect ourselves, like, so different, but it's like, but it ultimately leading to the same thing, that's like, we can't breathe and be authentic, and we're just like trying to survive.
Yeah. And también what I found interesting is like how I did feel the pressure while I was at school to be and do like 10 times more. So I was like always on time, and I always showed up early or on time. And I always like took bomb notes and videos, and like, you saw me, it was crazy. Like, I wasn't surprised that I crashed after graduating. And I went into, I mean, I can say it now, I went into a depression after graduation because I had gone so hardcore for 4 years. Not just like in school and trying to survive, but just feeling that pressure to do more because of the judgment that was put on me. And, you know, I have this need to make systems better. So the fact that I put systems in place and did things at that school to help younger generations, like younger students of color who come in, to hopefully make it smoother for them, it was just not easy.
Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, and on top of like you building systems in place, just watching them be teared down, you know, because you did place a couple, but then a couple were taken down like pretty fast. And it's just demoralizing to see that. I feel like I've always had to also overcompensate and work extra just because I'm not from here. I wasn't born here, and I don't look like anybody from here. Um, Honestly, the only thing that kept me sane, I feel, the entire time that I was going through school was having Marco, my partner, because whenever I'd be like, I have to go 100%, he'd be like, chill, like, you're fine. Like, you know, he'd always hit me with the like, you're good enough. You're fine. It's good enough. You're fine. And because I also like, así como dices, like you feel the pressure to like not outperform, but you have to perform more porque si no, you're viewed completely like lacking.
Yeah.
And so I think he was really like the only reason why I crashed for other reasons because I got the cancer diagnosis like at the end of the term. I mean, at the end of school, but I didn't crash because I had gone like 1,000%. And the only reason I didn't necessarily go 1,000% all the time was because Marco was constantly keeping me in check.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you had that for sure, because I can imagine how helpful that must be. Because yeah, it sucks. It
Yeah,
sucks to
no.
like the only thing that kept me going through school and going at that level for such a long time was like the vision and my purpose, which is what I'm doing now. Um, but at the same time, once I graduated, it was like that pressure was taken off my body and my mind and my spirit. And so my body's like, okay, yeah, we need to recoup and we need to mourn like all the stuff that happened during that time. Porque it wasn't something where I could just focus on school. It's like I had to build up this armor and dodge what I call like bullets, racist bullets, and all this stuff while I was at school. That it wasn't, it just sucks that it wasn't an experience where I could just focus on education. I also had to worry about all these other layers on top of it.
And the sad thing is that it's not like an uncommon story for people of color who are going through academia. I mean, when we were thinking about making Holistically Us, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was surviving academia, right? Surviving through academia for people of color, because we were both kind of like, wow, this is a lot. This is a lot to go through alone. Like it's a lot. There's so much pressure. So I mean, yeah, which is why I'm glad that Sydney mentioned, how her holistically moment was about grounding herself and reminding herself like to take a breath and to just, stay present and be in the day, because it is a lot of pressure. It just builds up, and it feels, when you're going to graduate, it just feels like a culmination of all these last 4 or 5 years, however, 3, 4, 5 years of like pressure in so many ways that's gonna like collapse you. So I'm glad to hear that she's kind of realizing that that's happening and trying to help herself not crash.
Yeah. I mean, I hope she doesn't crash because it's not fun.
Yeah, she won't. She has an amazing group of support system. She has dancing. She'll be good.
Yeah. And part of me also wants to figure out how to share with our listeners, like, what do you do as a person that doesn't have that support? Right. Because the other thing for me was like the graduation was realizing, like, shit, I applied to medical school. I moved to a new city. I graduated. I passed like I passed my boards and none of my family knows that this happened, and like not having people to share it with, or at least not like, I mean, there was people, right? Like there was you and there was like my other friends, pero como dices, not having that like, I don't even know how to say it, but I don't know how, like, I want to figure out how to give tools to people that don't have that nuclear family dynamic. Like, how do you navigate that? So I think I'm still trying to figure it out. Well, and when I find out, I'll let everybody know. But I do have some skills, but that's a bigger topic.
Yeah, no, I think like we've kind of touched upon that like several times where we talk about how, we want to become like a source for the people that are kind of going through it. But that makes a lot of sense. Like, yeah, how do you navigate when you don't have your nuclear family? And yeah, like moving to a different state and or a different city, graduate, just so many changes happening and not having a support system. It would be
Yeah,
good
because
to figure that out.
yeah, because when you cut ties, it's something where, like, of course, there's so much joy and there's
Yeah.
so much pride that I feel in everything that I've accomplished. Um, and because, like, at the end of the day, I know that I chose myself and I know that I'm breaking chains for future generations. And I'm also aware that those moments come with grieving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not how I wish that it would have been, but that's just not my reality. So yeah, that's something to um, keep in mind and something that I think would be helpful for some of our listeners that might be experiencing that. But I
Yeah.
am glad to hear. What helps me is hearing things like what Sydney said. That's like, oh yeah, like how do I keep myself grounded? And it's just a reminder that
Mm-hmm.
it's important to do that for ourselves también.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So she was a total breath of fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't
She really
realize how
was.
much I needed to hear her and feel that energy and that excitement. Well,
Yeah.
everybody, this was the chisme that you all asked for. I hope that you enjoy it. We enjoyed Sydney. And like always, we want to thank you so much for being part of our community audio space. We love and appreciate every single one of you. And you can follow me at Conexión_Acupuncture on Instagram. And you can follow Mayra at Florecer Acupuncture on Instagram. And of course, you can follow this podcast at Holistically Us on Instagram. Much love, much peace, and we'll see you on the next one.
Nos vemos en la próxima.
Bye.
Bye.